Good morning, everyone. Let's start with our daily market commentary. Now, as we are headed towards the end of the year, specifically towards December, stream of events are in line. So, basically, in the start of December, around 5th, we have our RBI meeting, and obviously on 11th, we have the political exit polls for different states election, and after that, on 19, 20, we have the Fed meeting as well. So I can say the entire December when it starts after the new expiry for the December end, more or less every week we have an event. So first week we have RBI, second week we have the exit poll election results, and the third one we have Fed meeting in place. Now the most important part to understand on the broader framework, things are intact or not, and then we can take some clues how things can change in the month of December. So when we're seeing on the monthly chart of S&P 500, so that is where we can get some clue. The first thing that we should understand on the monthly chart, the stream of upswing basically happened for almost about 6 months on S&P. And as we had said prior as well, the most important level for us to watch out is 2600. Now, what we have seen is over a period of last 2 months, the current one and the previous, we are seeing that from the higher sides of 2900, S&P has come down and it is again revisiting 2600 or so. So the most important point to understand on S&P side, 2600 becomes a huge zone of support, and we do not want it to be broken. Unless this gets broken, you can see a bit of downside that can come in place. So our focus has to be that S&P should remain around this 2600 mark and should not go below that. Going out even for a weekly perspective, this was the first bounce which came through, and again it came down trying to retest 2600 or so. Now try to understand the same thing happened over here. It fall down, came up, came down again, and then started moving up slowly and steadily. Now all we need to see the same zone where it is trying to test whether it will come back and try to revisit the higher levels or not. The most important or crucial levels that we have to watch out for, the smallest level is 2730, which has to be taken out, and there is a congestion zone around 2777. Once these are taken out, then we can see a steady up move on S&P 500. So for us, two important levels for S&P. Rather than upside, we are basically focused that 2600 on the downside should not be broken, and if that gets broken, we can basically see somewhat of selling coming into place on S&P 500. Now that can also spoil the party in India, as normally the global markets, specifically US, are down. It basically gives a downwards tremors to India. Now let's go out and see on the crude side as well. So crude and dollar have been working in our favor for this month at least, and when we are seeing on the crude side, it is very clear that it has always been in and around the range of 53, where it first broke and it targeted on the higher move. So on monthly chart, we can have a way more better clear picture where multiple amount of resistance was seen around the zone of 54. It went down and then it started zooming on the higher side. The most important point over here, it also consolidated at the lower end and then it started zooming higher. Now the point here was on the 75 kind of range, steep selling comes into place. Now that selling does not even take out these 4 candles which are there, but also one big month which basically takes out all the gains which has been going ahead. So it has been a bad sign where crude was hovering at the higher levels and straight from 75 towards 55. Obviously it cannot come towards 30 once again, but the most important point to understand for oil, important is 46 levels, where it should basically start moving sideways. Now even if it starts moving sideways, it is a good sign for India, where the oil was first targeting towards 75. Now it starts hovering towards 45, 50 or 55 kind of range. So we basically have some steady macros coming through if oil remains a little steady. On the dollar index front, for USD INR has also seen good amount of appreciation, but on the dollar front, what we see after the downside, the good steep rise has taken place on the dollar index, and this upswing which had taken place, because of that, even the dollar on Indian side had gone from 65 odd towards 73 or so. Now the most important point, as I said, one of the good important meeting is around 5th, where RBI is targeting on interest rates. If they increase interest rates, then INR can become strong, and on 19th we have the Fed meeting. They increase interest rate, dollar can become strong. So more or less, we need to keep an eye on both the monetary policies. The important for us is to understand these candles have been very, very small in strength. Only the last candle took it up almost towards the levels of 97, 98. Now it can consolidate at these levels and maybe in the month of December come back and revisit 95 or downside. So if dollar comes down, obviously it's good for us. And the currency wise, we can also go below 70 or so. Let's take USD INR. So on the USD INR front, it has basically gone on the higher side. But the most important point when it basically fluctuated from the higher side, so these were the prior highs, it consolidated a lot around the 68 range, came back, tried to retest. But now if you see, there was a good consolidation at the levels of 63 to 65 or so. The most important point, the same kind of rally, the dollar index was seen, and we are seeing in the USD INR. The point what one has to understand, the previous highs was around 68 or so. It tested over here, came down, tested once again, came down. Third time also it tried to test 1, 2, and 3 months. It was hovering around 68, and finally it blew up. Now the most important point to understand. Now the rise was faster. The fall started, but one has to understand it will bounce back. So the important level is 72.5 for currency mark. So 72.5 can basically see some kind of retracement, and then it basically comes down. Lower end is also limited towards 68 range. So 68 to 69 range is on the downside. So no big downside is there. Try to understand it might remain in this range. That is also decent enough or good for the macros point of view. So the most important point to understand on the dollar front, 68 to 69 kind of range will become a huge support, because this was the prior resistance zone, and that is where it zoomed. So it will come down fast, and it will basically take some strides to come down, maybe next 3 months or so. So all this will be dependent on monetary policies of both the countries, but more or less it can see little bounce as for now towards 72.5 or so, and then tends to incline on the lower side. Even if we see the same on the weekly, are we getting the same levels or not? And as I said, this was a lot of conversion zone which was happening around on the weekly side as well, and the sharp rise took place, which was again in the zone of 68 to 69. So our good support will come into place around 68, 69. This was the last green Muribazu which took place. Steadily it went down, and then once it took out Muribazu, we saw one more selling coming into place. Now after a huge sell-off which is taking place from the top, try to understand it cannot just keep going down one way. So that's where I'm saying that it might bounce a bit or so, but more or less on the monthly side, 72.5 is important, and we can basically figure out on weekly side somewhere around 71.5 is important. So this is now the range where it should again go up, try to test it back, and then inch on the downside. So more or less you can say 71, 72 kind of range on the upside, and 68, 69 range on the downside. So that is also good for us, because oil is targeting to remain range bound, and so is USD INR. So both of that comes into play, and we see that S&P is also on a very crucial note, right? 2600 mark. Now let's go out and see Nifty. When we go out and see Nifty, specifically on the monthly chart, in the last commentary also we had suggested that yes, the up move which had taken place was very fast, and then the downside came through. Now nobody expected downside of 10,000 to come through on the monthly side, but the most important point one has to understand that this is the most important support zone. Now why it is very, very important if you try to understand the important support zone, is because number one, it was first the resistance point. It never went above this, and then it zoomed, came back, and it tested exactly the same point in order to get another rise. So that is where it came down again over here, trying to get support around this mark of 10,000 or so. So the most important point is 10,000, and on the lower side 9,700. So more or less, if we try to see, this becomes a huge support range, because this is where we have seen Nifty spending a lot of time, and then the bounce happening through and through. Now, even if we see over here, the rise took place very fast, and then it halted, and that is why I'm saying that a good support range is around 9,700 towards 10,000 or so. Now, when we see this, this is the first shoulder, then this becomes your head, and then here, once again, we can see a head and shoulder formation getting completed. But more importantly, try to understand only upside in Nifty can be seen after these levels are taken out. So on the monthly side, it's very, very clear that 10,900 to roughly around, I can say 11,000 levels are hugely important for upside to come in place. So this is the monthly side or monthly picture, we can say. Now we can say that it's going on the sideways territory, and that is also good for us because there is no big trigger to take Nifty above 11,000. Now try to understand, oil has come down, dollar has subsided, S&P is trying to go on below 2600 mark. So that will not give an upside boost to Nifty. More than that, if we see, there is election on its way. So more volatility will basically bring Nifty more towards 10,000 or 9,700 range. So we should not be surprised if even if 9,700 gets tested, not because elections they miss out, but maybe because S&P might also give a spike on the downside, right? So that's where one has to focus. Try to use if Nifty comes on the higher side around 10,800 to 11,000 zone as a sell opportunity, right? So that is more important to understand. A good sell opportunity will be in place only on the higher side rather than on the downside, right? So a panic setting can come in around this 9,700 to 10,000 zone, and that is where we will see a huge upside again coming into place. So one thing is pretty much clear: 11,000 or 10,800 on the higher side becomes a huge resistance zone. So I do not see Nifty even inching towards 11,700 or previous highs unless 11,000 is breached. Number one. And number two, on the downside, 10,000 has remained a very good support, but try to understand once, twice, thrice, and now the fourth time it has been tested. So it might also give you a hint on the downside, right? So a spike on the downside cannot be ruled out this time if it has to trigger. Coming down on the weekly side from the monthly time frame, the most important point on the weekly is again very, very clear. It seems like, yes, a lot of time was spent over here, then it zoomed up, then again the support came around this zone of 10,120 or so, zoomed up. So more or less whatever you are trying to see on the monthly side, the weekly also seems to be the same. The most important point again is the same. If you see, this was the level where it zoomed up, came back down, took some support, and was trying to inch on the higher side. Now, when it was trying to inch on the higher side, it has tested around this 10,050 mark. And as I said, it can come back very easily towards 10,000. Now, try to understand on the weekly side, we see a big zoom coming in place. And after that, 1, 2, 3, and this week, fourth, is not a strong candle. So these are like a complete loss of momentum, which is happening over here. And the most importantly, if I say 10,450 or 10,000, so to be very precise, 10,450, right? And if you see this, this will give you an amazing opportunity if you want to trade on the downside. Because why I say 10,450 is the spike which was tested over here, and prior to that it is around this 10,500 zone which was tested yesterday. Okay, so these 2 points are hugely important for me because two things have happened. After the weekly upside which took place, it has gone sideways. Now it has not gone sideways for 2 weeks, but 1, 2, 3, and now the fourth week, right? And you are setting into a highly volatile scenario of 3 big events. If these range are taken out, so 10,450 or 10,500 range is taken out, there will be a free fall towards 10,000. So that is very, very clear. Now you have a good downside opportunity of 400 points straight away towards 10,000. And as I said, it will be the first time when it will test again 10,000 after, let's say, a month or so. It will spike back, or you can say a bounce back will happen, and it can basically verge this level once again, inching towards 9,700. So just to annotate the same, let me just show on the downside what things can take place. Now the most important point for one has to understand, if the downside has taken place, I'm trying to understand only after this 10,450 or 500 range, right? And that is very, very important. And after the selling of last week, okay, we need to see whether it sustains below the level of Moribazu or not. So that also comes around 10,500 or so. Coming down on the daily side, just to understand these orange lines have some meaning or not. Now, if I see the orange line, this is where we had seen it went up, came down, again it zoomed up, it came down. And this is where multiple time it has tested 10,450. And the 10,450 is very, very important because it was gap down, bullish, and a complete green, Moribazu. And this was like flying candles and which was taken out very easily. Yesterday also we saw it spiked almost towards 500, did not go to 450 or so, and it spiked on the higher side. So that's where you should understand this expiry might go more or less range bound, on the higher side 650 kind of range, lower side 500 kind of range. The most important is to understand if going forward, because of high volatile scenario, it might cross these level 500 and 450, and you can see a straight downside towards 10,000. So for me, orange lines are very, very important on shorter time frame, and I can say on the bigger time frame, these are the most important, or you can say crucial levels on the higher side, right? So 10,800, you can say this was a gap, right? And 11,000 is the range on the higher side. And on the lower side, as we have mentioned, 10,000, and more or less, if I go even below, it is 9,000 or 9,700 or so, which will get some support. Now let's see if Bank Nifty seems to give this kind of opportunity or not. Here, Nifty, we are clearly 450 and 500 becomes a huge point of inference. Below that, there is a huge downside risk on Nifty. Let's understand same for Bank Nifty or so. When I see on Bank Nifty, let's go out on the monthly chart. We have seen that Bank Nifty on the monthly chart after the huge rise, it's been making new high, and coming back down. So it's like a head and shoulder formation like Nifty itself. But the most importantly, one has to understand, this was the last time where the base was made, okay, and then it zoomed up, came back, and it took support around these range. So I can say more or less 23,600, and you can say 24,300 or so. So 24,300 was a good range. Then it zooms up and again it comes down and tests the same zone of 24,200 or so. So I can say more or less 23,700 to 24,200 becomes a huge support zone. And what we have seen is once the slide came down, and it came down very fast. And what we see for this month, it's been rising higher. So that's a good point where Bank Nifty has been stronger than Nifty. And this is what we have been saying through and through, that a strong upside can be seen in Bank Nifty. And that's what been seen in the entire month. So in the last month commentary, I was trying to be more bullish on Bank Nifty compared to Nifty. And that was the reason. A, it was in the good support zone. B, a good selling had taken place. And that's where we are now seeing a good upside for this entire month. Now coming down from the monthly side, we have got a good support range for Nifty around 24,000 zone, we can say. And more or less, it is also building itself on the higher side. It's not like Nifty, but it is going up fully green for the month. So that's a very good bullish stance for Bank Nifty. The most important point is basically 25,300, because this is the monthly open and it has gone up all the way. So for me, the most important point will be around this 25,000 zone. And if it goes below 25,000 zone, we can basically see it can head towards straight away from 25,000 to 24,000 zone. So free fall is possible in Bank Nifty, but provided that 25,000 gets taken out, 1,000 points downside towards 24,000 or so. So this is on the monthly chart. Let's go and see on the weekly chart whether the same is being seen or not. Now, let's understand first the good support zone which we have made. Yes, there has been a multiple times testing has taken place around this 23,700 point, and it has come back around this zone, right, around this 24,000. And this is where, which is very, very interesting. This goes up, comes back down, goes up. So kind of double bottom formation taking place, and then it starts going higher. Now what we see on the weekly side on Bank Nifty, after a huge upside, it's been going on the sideways journey. So after this, we are seeing that it's been making candles on the above 25,700 and selling took place. And today also it is seemingly strong. More or less, it is also taking out yesterday's high, right, week's high. So this is where Bank Nifty seems to be very, very strong. Obviously, RBI meetings is in place, but more or less it can straight away touch towards 27,000 or so. So if RBI does not increase interest rates, so that will be good for banks, and liquidity issues gets resolved, and we can see Bank Nifty heading towards 27,000 or so. The most important point to understand, if Bank Nifty turns bearish, so on the upside, the target for Bank Nifty is 27,000 zone, which is quite possible. On the downside, we see that if it goes down below 25,700, or you can say the spike, which is 25,400 kind of zone. So more or less, I can say below the zone of 25,700, okay, we can see a good downside heading towards 24,500 or so. So we are seeing a good downside possibility in Bank Nifty, but more than that, it seems to be superbly bullish compared to Nifty. So that's where we will get some support on Nifty. That's where I'm saying Nifty can head down faster compared to Bank Nifty. And we see there are clear intents over here also. 26,000 has become a good support range because a complete selling took place. Today it's opening. This week it opened little gap up, trying to inch on the higher side. So this shows a complete bullish stance on Bank Nifty. So Nifty seems weak, Bank Nifty seems bullish, and more or less 26,000 becomes a huge point of discussion. So for us, the first point is 26,000. Now let's summarize. After this, straight away towards this 25,400 or 500 kind of zone, and then it can head towards 24,500. So three levels: 26,000, 25,500 or 600 zone, and then straight away towards 24,500. So a huge fall is only possible below 25,500 or you can say 600 zone. So 25,600, we turn bearish on Bank Nifty straight towards 24,500. So if you want to eat 1,000 points on Bank Nifty, keep a watch out for 25,600 zone, and below this you can see a sharp selling coming into place for 1,000 odd points on the downside, right? So that's basically what we have on Bank Nifty, but more or less Bank Nifty seems to be stronger than Nifty, as we had told in the previous month itself. Now coming out from Nifty and Bank Nifty, let's take some stocks and let's also understand how each of them are playing out. So let's take the weekly structure of the heavyweight stocks of Nifty. What we see on Reliance, there has been a sharp rise and then a huge fall taking into place, but more or less kind of double bottom coming into place. So most important point for Reliance is around this 1,045, and on the upside it is also getting capped, right? So it's been going up steadily, but then you can see a huge fall coming into place almost towards 1,045 or so. So there is no big trigger on Reliance for the upside, but yes, on the downside it can come towards 1,050 or so very fast, right? So keep an eye on Reliance on the bearish stance. Let's now see the construction side after energy. L&T has been seemingly very bullish. Now if I look at the monthly chart, there is something very strange and very important happening on L&T. What we have seen on L&T through and through, it has not given huge outperformance in all the Nifty stocks. After this downside, it came back again on the higher side towards 1,200, and it was almost in this range of 1,200 to 1,150 for quite a long time, tried to inch on the higher side, and then we see that it is coming back almost towards 1,450 or so. Now what I see on L&T, seemingly very bullish on L&T, and after this there was a small gap up, and then for the month it is trying to stride higher towards all-time high. Now there has been a buyback also which was there in place, and that's where a boost has been given for L&T. Now it might come down because of all the fiascos of let's say Nifty going down or political agendas and all those kind of stuff. That should be taken as a buy opportunity in L&T. So the next dark horse is going to be L&T in coming 6 months or so. And obviously May 2019 elections are important for trending on the upside. And in this upside of May 2019, L&T will become a dark horse. Now you need to understand that on the monthly side, it's trying to trend in a range for such a long time. You can say for a year. Okay, on the upside is around this 1,400 mark. So let him come down. Let him consolidate around this 1,300 zone. And if you think you want to buy because you are bullish on market, or let's say Modi ji wins and market turns bullish or so, you can look out for L&T when it is making a U-turn from 1350 towards 1400 and then heading higher. So that seems to be very strong move on LNT. Even after markets going down, they have gone sideways. So that basically shows one strong intent of upside for LNT. So LNT is the best stock now going ahead also. After LNT, we have some TCS and Infosys has been zooming higher on back of dollar and so, and we can see that the rise was very fast and so was the fall, right? So these kind of rise and fall will obviously happen based on the USD time frame, which basically went up and went down. But most importantly, try to understand now on TCS, it has consolidated a lot around this 1400 mark. So if you see on TCS, 1400 was very important milestone. It broke that, and then after this 1400, there was no looking back. Now this rise from 1400 was very fast, and if dollar comes down towards 68 or so, or maybe around, even if it touches, the most important point for TCS is to break 1705. So for us, 1700 kind of zone is very important. But again, you can see on TCS, if it comes on the downside, you can again start picking up good trades on TCS, because this zone of 1700 should become a good support zone for TCS as well, right? So that's seemingly good. On Infosys as well, the same thing has happened. If you see, a small downside took place and then a stream of upside, which was very strong on Infosys as well. Now all the up move which took place has now been going on the downside. The most importantly to understand that it is now at the end of that downside, because the rise happened from these points of 600 or so, and it is back around those zones. So TCS, Infosys both might now consolidate at these levels, might spike down because on the back of dollar, but then again you have a good upside for TCS and Infosys. One stock where in IT it needs to be a special mention is Tech Mahindra. What we see on Tech Mahindra has been on a good ride, and after this long consolidation, we see a huge upside one way on Tech Mahindra. Now, obviously, this kind of rise will not happen once again, but the most important is to understand now it will not go below, okay, almost in the range of 630 or 640 kind of zone. It might remain in this zone, but the most important is it will be giving you the next bigger upside on Tech Mahindra. So on the IT side, it seems to be good on Infosys and TCS, and I would say on the stock side, specifically Tech Mahindra seems to be very defined trajectory. On the downside, 650 can be tested, and you've seen that multiple spikes around this range has been shown as a good buying opportunity. So let it come down, let it rest over here, and then you can make good trades inching towards 777 or even higher. So Tech Mahindra is also good from the technology part. Let's see ITC and HUL. So we have seen FMCG undergoing some kind of stress because of large valuation issues and stuff like that. But what I see on HUL is also very interesting. What I see on HUL, there has been a good stride on the upside, right? Around from this zones, you can see straight away rally took place, almost inching on the higher side towards 1800 or so. Now this rise was faster, it came down, it also spiked almost towards 1500, and then again it is trying to go on the higher side. So the coming bull market, if it basically serves as a bigger upside on Nifty, all the FMCG stocks will see a huge upside from here on. So on the lower side, even HUL seems to be very promising. As you can see now, the test has taken 1500 and again trying to bounce on the higher side. So Nifty underwent a correction, so did HUL, but a good rise can be seen on HUL front. So keep strong eyes on L&T, strong eyes on HUL, and obviously Tech Mahindra from the IT side. So this can become a good targeted stock. May go sideways now for some time, but once the upside comes in place, you can look for HUL as well. The most promising stock I can say now is Asian Paint, because now obviously the crude overhang is also out from Asian Paint. The most important is to understand Asian Paint had basically underwent a good kind of consolidation for a large amount of time. So if you see over here, this kind of consolidation took place around this 1100 to 1200 kind of zone for such a long time, and it zoomed all the way. Now, obviously, because of the FMCG move, Asian Paint also went up. But try to understand when the correction happened and the oil was also at almost trying to make new highs, it came back to this strong support zone, and we are seeing a bounce over here. Now, as I was saying, oil will not go on the upside. Try to understand, it might now give Asian Paint a new edge, right? So if Asian Paint comes down, let's say when Nifty hits 9,700 or 10,000 or so, this can be another stock which can be looked for the buy opportunity. So HUL, Asian Paint are seemingly the best candidates along with L&T stocks to perform. Apart from Asian Paint, if you go out even for ITC, on the ITC front, obviously, after the sharp rise which has taken place on ITC from the lower levels, you can see a bigger upside on ITC, but it went up almost towards 346, and I can say on the second hand, it went up to 320 or so. But the most interesting fact is this: it has been in the consolidation zone for such a long time, around 250 to 280 kind of zone, and it came back and tried to bounce. It might come back again towards these 260 270 levels. That can be a good buying zone for ITC, right? And coming out in the auto space, Maruti, Hero Moto, Bajaj Auto has seen a huge round of selling on all the sides. So obviously on Maruti, some things are very, very clear. The demands are not getting in and those kind of stuff. More than that, you can see a double top getting formed over here and a huge selling coming through its place. Now try to understand, whenever a stock, it obviously the rise was also fast. It also came down, but obviously it cannot make another huge round of selling on Maruti. So that won't happen. The most important part is to understand now where the big supports will lie. Obviously, this is now become the bottom for Maruti, 6,500, 6,500, 6,600 zone. And you should also now look inching on Maruti. So it might come back down if the monthly numbers do not pick up, and then you can see a good up move coming into place. So Maruti will be a good candidate as well, a beaten down candidate, and it can also see good buying around the support zone. Another stock on the auto, M&M. So M&M has been going into diversified segments along with tractors and others. It has now started launching its motorbikes and stuff. So what one has to understand on M&M, it's not been a great performer because we can see a long amount of sideways movement for M&M, and this is where it broke out finally towards inching higher towards 1,000 or so. But most important for us to understand, it has come in the support zone. Okay, and I basically see these as the support zone for M&M. So 630 and 720 kind of category seems a good buying opportunity if you want to trade on M&M on the lower side. So auto is going to be a little bearish, but obviously during the downside, many people would short auto, and that will become a good buying opportunity. So M&M and Maruti can also give you a very good bounce in next 6 to 8 months. So keep an eye on those stocks as well. So more or less, let's understand on the banking side now. Two banks where we were more bullish was ICICI Bank and Axis Bank. And as we see from last month to this month, ICICI has given a strong up move, and it's almost, you can say, lifetime high or so. Now try to understand, it has undergone a good consolidation, and a lot of issues were there in ICICI Bank. But now the NPA resolutions are coming into place, and corporate banks can see a bigger upside. So this was the downside, came through, tested the same high, came back. Now the downside was not the same as the previous one, so it is now going sideways. Now obviously because of market corrections, ICICI can again come down, but I would be more bullish on ICICI around the range of 300 or so. So rather than buying around at the higher range, it's better it comes down around the range of 300 and tries to, and we can basically park ourselves in ICICI for the up move. So ICICI can obviously now will become the best upside stock on the banking side. And even if we take Axis Bank, both of these are seemingly strong or good candidate on the upside. When we see on the Axis Bank as well, so there is no iota of doubt that Axis Bank now cannot perform. If you see on the higher side, it has already made new highs, right? And more importantly, after the last consolidation and the breakout which happened from these support zones of 500 or so. So you cannot see a bigger downside on Axis Bank. And obviously in the previous 2 months or so, you can see the downward spike has not gone below 550 or so. So I would say the upper range obviously gets clogged around the 650 zone, but I would be a buyer around the zone of 550 or so for Axis Bank. So keep an eye on these kind of stocks on Nifty 50 if you want to track on, and these stocks will basically become the next candidate for the bull market. So if Nifty has to make new highs, obviously we need to see out how these stocks are performing. And obviously on the downside, it might get limited towards 550 or so. So among the other banks, obviously HDFC Bank stands out. And if you see on the HDFC Bank as well, a good correction has taken place. So if you look on the weekly side, so HDFC already has seen a good correction in place, and this was the last point where the complete rally took place, came back down more or less around this zone and consolidated a lot in this zone. So I can say 1900 is now a good pitching point for HDFC, and we can see that a strong downside, complete sideways movement, and now it is inching higher, and that's where you are trying to be more bullish on Bank Nifty, because on the upper side again it will trend. 2100 is the upside for HDFC, so it might get stopped around the zone, but the most important point, if it falls, this becomes a good supporting point around this 1950 kind of zone for an upside. So HDFC, Axis Bank, ICICI on the banking side seemingly very strong, right? So keep an eye on Nifty and Bank Nifty. As you were saying, Nifty seems to be little weak compared to Bank Nifty. Let's again just see the levels what we were trying to target for. The most importantly, 10,500 to 10,450 is the smaller range, and if that gets taken out, we can see a sharp fall towards 10,000. So that's point number one. Point number two, if it starts going higher towards 800 to 11,000 zone, you need to be a seller on Nifty rather than buyer. Obviously, there have to be good news for him to inch towards 11,000 or so, and obviously all those news and expectations will be done, and after that a good selling will again bring him down towards 10,500. So more or less 2 points where we are more bearish on Nifty rather than bullish. If all the state elections are in favor, Nifty will rise towards 11,000 or so, and then you can see it coming back towards 10,500. If it goes below this and sustains below 10,500 zone, you can see straight away, even before elections results are out, towards 10,000 or so, because the fall will be faster in the anticipation that BJP might not get some states. So keeping both the eyes on the bearish view, we are not trying to be bullish over here. Where the bullish stance, we know that 11,000 will become a good resistance category for Nifty. Now we need to understand US, if it clocks down below 2,600. So I would be rather than more interested in S&P rather than Nifty, because S&P will basically going below this 2640, or you can say 2600 zone, becomes a bearish candidate, right? So that will give another tremors for Nifty. So that's where I'm trying to become more bearish on Nifty rather than bullish. Even if good news comes by, it will get sold, and we are trying to be bearish at unique point of opportunities. Fine. So trade cautiously for this December month. Let the events get passed out, and then take some actions on trade, right? So don't try to be priorly entering into the event. Go slowly and be little vigilant about the next month. Fine. Thank you very much. I hope the levels are very much clear on Nifty, specifically then Bank Nifty. Thank you for joining in.